What an improbable win from the Pittsburgh Steelers, starting out 1-0 in the season with a 23-20 overtime win over the Cincinnati Bengals. Ray Fittipaldo of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette joins me. I'm Chris Carter, host of the North Shore Drive podcast of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Ray was on hand. I was here in Pittsburgh watching from television. So Ray's going to give us a lot of the insights he had into a big day from Minkah Fitzpatrick, whether or not the defense can survive without TJ Watt if his injury is long-term, and a look at the offense, who was to blame for some of the mistakes, Mitch Trubisky, Matt Canada, all that right here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Let's get into it. You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter. And welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast. It's the Monday edition, and it's a victory Monday for all you Steelers fans out there. It was a crazy game. I'm Chris Carter here with my guest, my friend, my colleague here in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Ray Fittipaldo. First of all, Ray, what was that like? How many times did you rewrite your story up in the stands when you were watching this game?
Well, luckily, Chris, it's a 1 p.m. game, right? So it wasn't on deadline, so that helped out a lot. But I'll tell you, I have covered some crazy games against the Bengals in my career, including that 2015 wild card game in Cincinnati with Pac-Man and
Vontaze Burfict
and all that. Yeah, I mean, that was probably more bizarre. But I have to tell you, for a regular season game, man, that was one weird game. And hey, Steelers are 1-0, so I guess they'll take it. But yeah, very, very strange football game.
If you were to say there was a player of the game, who would you say?
Minkah. Pick six to start it, right?
I mean, the second play for the Bengals offense, he picks it and takes it to the house, and it's like, what just happened?
2 minutes into the game, 14 tackles.
Ridiculous.
And the block PAT to get them to overtime after the Bengals. I mean, you should have seen their fans, their players celebrating. In the back of their mind, I'm sure they're thinking, okay, backup long snapper. I mean, we should be okay. But, man, that looked like – I wrote in my story, it looked like an EFIS pitch, from back in the 1950s.
Yes.
But, I mean, Minkah what we saw today from Minkah was 2019, 2020 Minkah, sitting back, making plays, and he's a terrific football player. And if he keeps us up, man, he's going to be an All-Pro again, and he might be in the conversation for DPOY.
Certainly. We'll get to TJ Watt's injury later because I know a lot of people want to hear about that, but I want to focus on just what the Steelers were able to do to confuse Joe Burrow. I mean, yes, he throws for 300 some yards. He did the game tying touchdown, but they forced him to throw 4 interceptions. He had 2 fumbles, was sacked 7 times, lost one of those fumbles. That last sack pushed them out of field goal range in overtime, which gave the Steelers the punt that led to their final drive that won them the game. Yeah. I get that Joe Burrow had some rebounding moments, but when I watched this game and I went back and I started going back over some of those big moments, it's just the defensive scheme seemed to mess with him all game long. And I think a lot of that was based off of Minkah Fitzpatrick's flexibility. Yeah,
I mean, if you notice, Chris, not a lot of deep shots from Joe Burrow, a lot of too deep safety. If you remember the pick six, I mean, he jumped that. So they were playing, they were forcing the Bengals to take a lot of the underneath stuff, and Jamar Chase had a big game in that regard, right? I mean,
he did.
A lot of those shallow crossers across the middle. Steelers didn't really have an answer for that, but you could tell they were okay with that. They were okay with – they thought they would be a bend but don't break defense today. And when you get those turnovers like they did, you get them early in the game, you get the game in your favor, and you get them behind the 8 ball to the point where Joe Mixon isn't the factor that he normally is, then that really just makes it really, really tough on Joe Burrow to have a typical Joe Burrow type of game. So, yeah, let's give Mike Tomlin credit. Let's give Terrell Austin, who called his first game, credit. Really, really good game plan. And I thought it was interesting after the game, Joe Burrow said it wasn't anything they weren't expecting. They were expecting a lot of two deep, and they expect that a lot of the year too. So I think they're wise to the fact that Jamar Chase hurt a lot of teams last year. T. Higgins hurt a lot of teams last year. They're going to get that very careful, conservative game plan from opposing defenses, and they're going to have to find a way to figure it out. I mean, they got the yardage today, but the turnovers and the lack of getting in the end zone really, really hurt them as an offense, I think.
I think it was 2 out of 5 red zone trips they got touchdowns on. That's something that will come back to bite you, especially when you've turned the ball over 5 times. But I think you tipped on something that it was really important that I've been talking about a lot all week. If the Steelers were able to make Joe Mixon a non-factor in this game, you can't shut the run game completely out, but make him not have his 165 rushing yards that he did when the Bengals blew out the Steelers in the second game last year. Make him not average 4 yards a carry, like that. When I looked back, I think he averaged just a little over 3 yards a carry. And if you took away that 31-yard run that he had on the 4th and 1, where the Steelers just overloaded and then they just he snuck out right past it, you take that away, he averaged less than 2 yards per carry on all the other runs. To me, the Steelers' run defense, and I want to hear from you, Ray, on this. I thought Devin Bush, Miles Jack, all the defensive linemen, they played so well in sync, and that's a big part of what allowed that secondary to make all those interceptions.
Yeah, not a lot of guys out of their gaps the way you saw last season. That was a huge problem. I thought they did a very good job of staying disciplined. You mentioned Miles Jack, 10 tackles, second on the team behind Minkah. So I thought he had a really good game. I thought Devin Bush played pretty darn well. I mean, even in coverage, he had Perrine down the sidelines late in that game. I think it was late in regulation or maybe even in overtime, had him blanketed pretty good. So I thought the linebacker play was excellent overall, especially TJ and Alex Highsmith. But, yeah, I mean, I thought the run defense was really, really good. Mixon was getting some 4 or 5 yard gains in the first half. Second half, once they were behind, he really got shut down in that second half. Probably more of a factor in the passing game in the second half, much more so than the running game.
Yeah, I'd agree with that assessment. And you were right about that one pass. Joe Burrow went after him on that deep ball to the running back, and he was blanketing his man down the field. It really seemed like there were a lot of times where the Bengals thought they could pick on a certain weakness or a certain part of the Steelers defense. There were times they hit, but like in the red zone on one of the stops they had, there was a second down play where Hayden Hurst blocked out Terrell Edmonds into the end zone, but you saw, I think it was Miles Jack as a linebacker and then another cornerback pinch on Jamar Chase in the middle part of the formation. And so Joe Burrow was like, well, that read's gone. I have to throw it away. And it's just, they seemed ready for so many of the things that the Bengals were trying to do to get going in their offense.
Yeah. And like the one play where you sort of look back on and wonder what they were doing, the Chase touchdown with 2 seconds left.
Yeah.
You would think maybe, okay, Witherspoon, he was close, but that really wasn't contested. So if they would have kicked the PAT and they would have lost that game, I think a lot of people would have questioned, okay, why weren't you in bump and run? Why weren't you disrupting? Why weren't you double covering Jamar Chase in that situation? But hey, that's probably one black mark on it, and otherwise just terrific game by that defense.
Absolutely. I want to talk to you more about this defense because TJ Watt's injury is feared to be a torn pec. There's no confirmation on that, but we're going to break that down and whether or not the Steelers team can carry forward without him in just a minute here. So stay tuned on the North Shore Drive podcast for more on that. But first, we're going to talk to you about our sponsors. We have our first sponsor, Acrisure, introducing Acrisure Fan Advantage and the power to project one of our Post-Gazette Steelers beat writers into your home or office. Using augmented reality, you can get an exclusive pregame breakdown from a Steelers expert standing in your living room. Get the latest insights on starting lineups, key matchups, and critical stats at post-gazette.com/Acrisure Fan Advantage. No apps or downloads, just insider access to Steelers updates at post-gazette.com/Acrisure Fan Advantage and get a real edge on the week's action. We're also brought to you by Liquid Death. You may see your coworkers cracking open a can in your 9 a.m. meeting, but it's most likely not a beer. It's a Mountain Spring water brand called Liquid Death. After establishing, there's this crazy new water brand out there called Liquid Death that looks just like beer. Then let me explain to you. It's actually a water brand called Liquid Death. Why is this water called Liquid Death? Well, because it will brutally murder your thirst, and they're definitely recyclable tall boy cans are helping to bring death to plastic bottles, which are a big problem for the environment. They also donate 10% of their profits from every can sold to help kill plastic pollution on the planet. We all know how harmful plastic is to the environment and how good water is for you. So why not help both win with a tall, cold can of Liquid Death? Go get Liquid Death at your local Target, 7-Eleven, or County Fair, or find Liquid Death retailer near you with their store locator tool at liquiddeath.com/shore. That's liquiddeath.com/shore. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Ray Fittipaldo. Ray, okay, so give Steelers fans the update on two specific injuries. We'll start with TJ Watt. What have you heard? There's rumors that it's a torn pec. Is that definitive, or do you think that that's definitely the case right now?
Well, I mean, the Steelers haven't announced that it is a season-ending pec injury, but talking to the players in the locker room, you can tell it's definitely going to be a longer-term type of an injury. He'll get back to Pittsburgh. I'm sure he's getting an MRI tonight or Sunday night or Monday morning, and then we'll know more about the injury then. Pec injuries usually are season-ending, but listen, J.J. Watt came back from a pec injury a couple of years ago and played in the playoffs for the Cardinals. Stefan Wisniewski had a pec injury for the Steelers. The Steelers actually let him go. They cut him, and he got picked
I remember that.
He got picked up, and he played in the Super Bowl that year for the Kansas City Chiefs. So there are varying degrees of pec injuries. So we'll see what happens Monday. We'll probably have more news. But, definitely looking like it's a longer-term injury where the Steelers are going to have to get by with guys like Malik Reed and Jameer Jones filling in.
Before we get to the rest of the Steelers defense, could you foresee them making a move, Omar Khan making a call? Like, he created some cap space right before the season started, right? Is this a time where he makes a call and adds somebody out there, maybe a Jason Pierre-Paul, somebody who can just add at the edge rusher position?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a possibility. I think, in the short term, it's probably going to be Malik Reed. He was a productive player for the Broncos. Kind of got caught up in a number situation there where they went out and got Randy Gregory over the offseason. And, they invested some high draft picks in a guy like Chubb. So he was kind of the odd man out, but I don't think it was for a lack of production. He was actually a pretty good player there. And, the Broncos did him a solid by making him available to the Steelers. And as it turns out, he signs with the Steelers because he knew they didn't have a lot of depth. And here we are, one game into the season. And as you said, unless the Steelers make a major move, looks like it's going to be the Malik Reed show here, until TJ Watt can come back later in the season, if indeed he can.
If TJ Watt is out, even if not, let's say out for the season or even out to like week 18, week 17 without that part, is this team good enough to compete? I mean, this defense, it wasn't just TJ Watt. I mean, he made a lot of great plays. I mean, Alex Highsmith had three sacks. You had interceptions from three other guys on top of TJ Watt. You had 7 sacks coming from all different directions. The run defense was there. Is this defense enough to hold up and say, hey, we can still win games, or are the Steelers in a lot of trouble that they've lost their best player?
Chris, he's the reigning NFL Defensive Player of the Year. There is going to be a huge drop-off. I just told you Malik Reed is a solid player.
Solid.
We're talking ear to ear, right? I mean, that's what it – and that's no slight against Malik Reed. It's just it's the reality of when you have a player the caliber of TJ Watt, one of the highest-paid players in the NFL. So, yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, I think the good news is you have Minkah Fitzpatrick, who balled out today. You got Cam Hayward. You got Alex Highsmith, who had 3 sacks and I thought was really disruptive on the other side. So they do have some pieces where I think you can remain competitive. I think what they're going to have to do, what's the stat? They've led the NFL in sacks for the last
5 years.
5 years running. If they're going to do that again, dial up more blitzes.
Yeah.
Maybe more twists up front. You're going to have to get creative because no matter how good Malik Reed is or Jameer Jones or anybody else who tries to fill that void, they're not going to be TJ Watt and, take away 22 and a half sacks or whatever it was last year. And that's some production that's going to be hard to make up.
I mean, it's hard to imagine anyone contributing any way that TJ Watt does. I think that there's hope for the Steelers to say that, hey, they can find other ways to win games. But this was a roster that I think was built on the ability to crush teams defensively, hit the quarterback a lot, let TJ Watt eat in the way that he did in this game. I mean, the man had a sack. The man had an interception. Man tipped another pass. He had tackles for loss. He was all over the place, and you felt his presence. And the thing is that people need to understand, and I mean, I know you understand this, Ray, but other success on defense is built off of success of others. And Alex Highsmith, he probably doesn't get 3 sacks if TJ Watt's not in the field, because then teams can say, hey, we're rotating our pressure to that side because that guy. I mean, Alex Highsmith is getting one-on-ones all game, because are you really going to double team him to leave TJ Watt in one-on-one? Cam Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi. Teams are going to have to say, let's try to get the third year guy. Wait, is he third year now? I always mix it up with him. I think he is a third year. But let's try to get the third year guy and see if he'll be the one that can't beat us. And he got to Joe Burrow 3 times in this one. You also saw late in the game, there was one of those corner blitzes. Arthur Maulet got to Joe Burrow, forced that fumble that pushed the Bengals out of field goal range. I think there's ways the Steelers can manage, but I think you're right. There's no replacing the best defensive player in football.
No, I mean, listen, it's almost like when you lost Ben Roethlisberger in 2019, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everyone is trying to figure out, okay, what do we do? Now, it's a different situation. I think, this defense is probably built better to survive that type of a hit because they got players on every level of the defense that can, theoretically step up their game. But yeah, I mean, Chris, it's going to be really, really hard to maintain. I mean, the performance we saw today, you got to maintain that without TJ Watt. That's a tall ask.
The other major injury that we saw, and yes, Robert Spillane left the game, Levi Wallace left the game, but the big one I think a lot of people were worried about was Najee Harris. He didn't finish the game. He had a very obvious foot injury on a late run in the fourth quarter, and he didn't return. Ray, was this do you get the sense that this could be a re-sparking or a re-injuring of the same foot of the Liz Frank injury, and that this could also be long-term?
I did not see Najee in the locker room after the game, so I don't have an update on that. But a lot of people are saying, okay, he aggravated the Liz Frank injury. We all saw, Chris, how cautious they were with him during the preseason. I want to say he missed about 3 weeks of training camp.
That's my count.
They did put him in that last preseason game to get him some work. I don't think they would have brought him back, Chris, if that wasn't healed. So, maybe there is some hope that this is not the same injury. But yeah, I mean, if it is a Liz Frank, you're talking 6 to 8 weeks at a minimum, I would think.
Yeah.
If it's a bad one, month at the very minimum. So Jaylen Warren, Benny Snell, hey, maybe they go out and make a move. Maybe they go out and get a running back too. We'll see what happens. Anthony McFarland on the practice squad. I mean, they've got options, but hey, if it's Jaylen Warren time, we all know they love him. He had a great preseason, but this is probably
a little different.
A little bit too much too soon, if you ask me. I mean, I think he's a good player, but asking him to be the number one workhorse, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. We'll also talk about the offense. We spent a lot of time talking about the defense in the first 2 segments, and rightfully so. They played a phenomenal game. But we got to talk about the offense. They only scored a single touchdown in the game. They only got 2 field goal drives in the game, and a lot of it was set up from the defense. There was only one time I think they had a real drive that got, and that was that last field goal drive to win the game. We'll talk about the offense and what they need to do moving forward. But first, here on the North Shore Drive podcast, we got to talk about one of our great sponsors, MyBookie. While the Steelers prepare to battle the Patriots, prepare for your winning season at MyBookie. Some like to bet to earn, and some like to bet to make the season more exciting. Either way, MyBookie gives you the most for your money with a double deposit bonus. It's a quick and easy $250 deposit plus $500 in your account instantly. And you can use your funds to bet on as many games, contests, and props as you want. To claim your bonus, register today and use promo code NSD. That's NSD for North Shore Drive, designed to add more excitement to the games and sports that you love. That's promo code NSD to double your money up to $1,000 at MyBookie. It's only week 2 of the NFL season, which means there's still plenty of time to get in on the action. Don't miss out. Begin your winning season today exclusively at MyBookie. We're also brought to you by Yinzer's Shop or YinzersPGH.com. Hey, Yinzers, listen up. The Steelers campaign is off and running. They're 1-0. So show your support for your black and gold by going to the legendary Yinzers in the Berg shops to get your Pittsburgh sports apparel. And there's 2 legendary shops in the Strip District. Plus, they have a growing online store. Yinzers in the Berg is the place to go for Pittsburgh sports apparel, accessories, and much, much more. We'll see you in the Strip District or check them out online. Just shop YinzersPGH.com. That's YinzersPGH.com for all your Pittsburgh sports apparel. So, Ray, defense, awesome. Great plays. Offense, not so great. Mitch Trubisky, he got it done in the end. He did throw a touchdown. He does have a higher passer rating than Joe Burrow. But what did you see from this offense? Was this about him? Was this about the offensive line? Was this about Matt Canada? What couldn't get these guys going?
I think probably a little bit of everything. I mean, Chris, if you look at their big plays in that football game, a lot of reverses, jet sweeps, flea flicker, gadget type plays for their big chunk plays. I mean, it wasn't traditional offense. And I mean, to me, that's worrisome. I mean, you can get a couple of trick plays on some teams. I mean, that worked today. Can you count on that for how long? I mean, that's not a sustainable winning formula for the offense. So we went into this season knowing the offensive line was going to be a big problem if they didn't get their stuff cleaned up. Their stuff's not cleaned up. So to me, that's problem number one. And I think everything else just kind of, stems from there. I thought Mitch was good when he had to be, but, probably left a lot of plays on the field too. Running game was non-existent because of the line. I thought Pat Freiermuth, let's give Pat Freiermuth 10 targets, 5 catches, had a couple of big ones, that huge one on the final drive. I mean, if there's one bright spot for the offense, I think it's Pat Freiermuth to come out of today. That great catch by Deontay Johnson too. I don't want to forget that, but I mean, we're talking about like 4 or 5 plays. I didn't look at the play-by-play sheet. They had to run 80 plays, maybe, Chris. I mean, you're talking about 4. I mean, they need to be more productive. They got to figure out and run some form of a traditional offense where you can count on the running game, count on play action passes, and get away from the gadget plays. I mean, keep doing them if they're going to work. But like I said, teams are going to figure that out pretty darn quick.
22 rushing plays, 38 passing attempts. By my count, that's off the top of my head, 60 plays there, but still, that's a lot.
Wow, that's a lot fewer than I thought.
It's fewer, but 60 plays and 13 first downs and 4-15 on third down. Mike Tomlin talks a lot about, hey, maybe you can't make the crazy, ridiculous play, but at least win the situational plays. And that's just not what was happening throughout this game a lot. And sure, there were some moments where, maybe you could have said, well, Deontay Johnson did get across this line here or something like that. But you still they needed time. Just move the ball, give the defense a break. Towards the on that last drive of the fourth quarter, if they get a first down, it wins the game. And TJ Watt may not get hurt in that situation. Right. You needed something from him, and you didn't get it. And I think there's a lot of soul searching to say, hey, what can you make work, especially with TJ Watt? Even if the worst is avoided, Ray, he's definitely missing time. Even if there's somehow a miracle that happens, but your offense has to improve somehow.
Well, let's walk through that situation you just mentioned. They get the ball back on their own 17.
Yeah.
I believe the first play was to Najee for a -2.
Yep.
That's a play
he got hurt.
He got hurt, right? Okay, so boom. Bengals have 2 timeouts. Matt Canada calls a passing play.
Yep.
On the next day. So the Bengals actually don't burn any of their timeouts on that drive. And that's actually how they came back and tied that score. So, I mean, we just got done talking about, Matt Canada struggles down it up for this offense here in game one. But, when you factor in time management to it too, I mean, it's, he's kind of complicating things that he's just got to be cleaner. He's got to realize, okay, we're in this situation. Let's have the Bengals burn some timeouts and, let's maybe make it a little bit easier on our defense. That didn't happen. You can't fault Najee for not being able to get off the field, right? I mean, I know he eventually jogged off under his own power, but, stuff like that's going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, above and beyond the problems with personnel, Mike Tomlin can't have his offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
If that was Mike Tomlin's call, we might find out.
Yeah.
Mike Tomlin said, okay, hey, Matt, you want to call this? I'll give you the green light. So I don't want to pin it all on Matt, but coaches just have to be a little bit smarter in that situation as well.
I agree. It was a faux pas on your part. They had 2 timeouts. They run the one to Najee. His injury stops the clock. They call it a second play. It's an incomplete pass. Stops the clock again. The Bengals never have to use that timeout until the third down play where they use one, but they keep one and they get the ball back with a minute 27 seconds left. And they have a timeout in their pocket, and they scored with 2 seconds left. And to me, that's the tough thing to swallow there. Even though they get out with a win, even though this all worked out in the end, you were right. One, the defense at the end, there should have been a bracketing, a something to handle things better on Jamar Chase on that last touchdown. And I know that's nitpicking on a defense that had 5 turnovers and played lights out. But the offense in that situation, even if you could shave off another 20 to 30 seconds in that drive, you would have helped this. You would have forced Joe Burrow's hand a lot sooner. Maybe he doesn't get as close to the goal line. Maybe he has to throw further downfield, and maybe that gives your defense more of a chance to make a play on the football so that you never get to this point. And again, I'm not saying that the TJ Watt's injury was on the offense, but if they were able to capitalize on 5 turnovers and give the Steelers a lead that put this game away earlier, the Bengals probably aren't driving so late. TJ Watt isn't trying to blow up every single play, and he doesn't put in this situation where he may have torn his pec and could be out for the season. It's just another sign that there's still a lot to clean up with this offense.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, you make a great point. I mean, TJ Watt wouldn't have been put in that situation if they could have run out the clock and gotten 1 first down there. So that's a huge point. And, we'll see if it comes back to bite them. But, they got to be better on offense. Matt Canada has to be more creative, but that line has to play better. It's time for that line to step up.
I agree.
Man up a little bit and, get some semblance of a running game so they're not behind the chains all the time. That's one thing that has to improve.
Absolutely. You can read all about it in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We had Ray Fittipaldo, we had Jerry Dulac, we had Brian Batko. I believe we had Jason Mackey on hand, Ron Cook. We had a force out there. So if you want to get all the coverage, go to post-gazette.com right away. Check out all the great covers that they have. Myself, Chris Carter, Noah Hiles, we cover the crazy action in Pitt. Ray, I'm getting tired of overtime games, man. It's getting ridiculous. I just covered one Saturday. You guys had to cover one Sunday. I'd like to get some sleep afterwards. It's ridiculous out here, man. But you guys do a great job as always, so I hope everyone checks out your coverage. Ray, let people know where they can find you, follow you online, and maybe what else you might be working on coming up.
Yeah, Twitter @RayFit1, and we'll have more stuff throughout the week. We are driving back from Cincy to Pittsburgh on Monday, but we'll be at Mike Tomlin on Tuesday, and we'll have a lot of great coverage for everyone throughout the week before the first home game at Acrisure against the Patriots next Sunday.
Absolutely. That would be a great one. Thanks so much, Ray, for your great job on the show. I'm Chris Carter. He's Ray Fittipaldo. Follow the North Shore Drive podcast. We're on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube. If you saw this video on YouTube, like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the Pittsburgh Sports section of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette on YouTube to get all of that here. And also subscribe to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We'll be back Wednesday with Jason Mackey talking about the biggest story in Pittsburgh. Maybe it's the TJ Watt situation. Stay tuned to the North Shore Drive podcast for more. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you're watching this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down below in the description.